Welcome to the June 12th, 2025 Inspiring Author Conversations. I'm Kathy Davis, Davis Creative Publishing. Today we'll be speaking with Jenn Espinosa-Goswami on going from the page to the stage, how to sell more books as a speaker and author. Our theme for 2025 is growing your business by the book. Each month we welcome guests who inspire authors by sharing our knowledge, new ideas, and opportunities and wisdom. Please help me welcome Jenn. She is an ICF certified speaker coach. Oh, I used to go to ICF.
Oh,
We've got a group here in St. Louis. Founder of Weightless LLC, a former Toastmasters International officer and graduate of the Masters of Leadership program at Augsburg University. Jenn helps authorpreneurs sell more books, stay booked as expert speakers. Jenn was recognized as a top 15 coach in Minneapolis by Influence Digest. Previously, Jenn served as a certified fraud examiner for 16 years with financial companies. Small world. I used to be with Bank of America.
oh, we have so much in common, Kathy.
Welcome, Jenn. Thanks for being here.
Thank
The
you. It's lovely to be here.
I know I've had a lot of people excited about you being here, and we just kept teasing them. So I apologize in advance for those of you. We've had to cancel and reschedule. First time I was not feeling well at all, and life happens. So, but we finally got us all back together. And so, Jenn, I know you have some slides. Are these something you want to share now or later? How would you like to do that?
Yeah, so I was just going to give some context around why authors just make great speakers and things like that, just starting with that. But you can go ahead and
Yes.
jump into your questions, Kathy. But I'd love to hear from the audience if you all are willing to play and go in the chat there. If you have a book right now, can you put the title of your book in the chat so we know who's an author in this space?
I know I recognize quite a few of our authors, and I see you have some of your fans here also. Rati is here. I haven't seen you in ages. Hello, hello. So let's see, we've got a few that have shown up here. You can still see the chat. And
And there's probably people with multiple books as well, but choose one of the books that you'd like to focus today's discussion on because any book is good, but you probably have one that's more at the forefront of what you'd like
so
to share more
Lataris.
about.
So Rati has 5 emotions that stop success. Kimberly has head, heart, and hands listening in coaching practice. Lataris, this is fairly new. What we published this within the last 6 weeks, I think, maybe 8. Blending love and embracing a new direction, mixing well in your blended family with the acronym BLEND. Jan Kraus, Rambler of Mars. Well, there's a conversation there, Jan, we haven't had. I need to find out about that book. Uh, you have quite a variety here.
Yeah, some really good titles, really standout titles. I'm excited to hear more.
So, what are some of the advantages, or tell us how you got involved? How did you get from finance to speaking NSA Toastmasters and loving what you do?
Oh, well, in some ways I loved finance. It fulfilled a different need of me. So I was a fraud investigator for various mortgage companies here in Minneapolis, and I liked being a fraud investigator in the sense of I was working with the FBI, the CIA. I was participating in internal investigations of our employees. I was participating in the greater industry of investigations. So that was super fun. I was in the know and got to meet a lot of really cool people. But I joined Toastmasters just because my manager was like, come on, Jen, you need to develop more than you are currently. I'm like, okay, I'll just join this local Toastmasters group. It's right on campus. I'll go during my lunchtime. And it was really fun. It was fun in a way that I didn't anticipate it would be. And so I got to a point where I was like, okay, what more can I do? And I had been hesitant to talk about a particular topic, and that topic ended up becoming my signature speech. But at the time, I was really hesitant because I was talking about lifestyle change, and people in my Toastmasters group didn't know that side of me. So I finally had the courage to talk about my lifestyle change, and it had a huge impact on people in the room. In fact, my mentor, Siobhan, came up to me and she said, Jen, that 5 minute speech was so good that I'm going to change my life. And this is not unusual for people who share their message and their story on different stages, is you will have people in your audience come up to you and say, because of what you just shared, I'm going to do something different in my life. And so I was like, okay, if that's the power of a 5 minute speech, what might be the power of a 60-minute speech? And so the idea for Weightless was born.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So weightless, is that something you want to share more about?
Yeah, so when I started, my signature speech in the beginning was about lifestyle change. So I started off as a professional speaker under Weightless. And the idea of my company name was we have physical weight that holds us back from the things that we want to achieve in life. Now, I kept that name when I pivoted to speaker coaching because what I realized was confidence sometimes doesn't have anything to do with gravity. It has to do with the emotional or mental things that hold us back. And so it felt appropriate for me to keep the title of Weightless. Plus, my logo has balloons, and I'm like, I'm all about celebrating my clients, their milestones, their achievements, and that's inherent in what I do with coaching. So I kept the title Weightless because I want you to defy gravity. I want you to do the things that are a little bit scary and that you have a passion for. So that's the story behind Weightless.
That's fantastic. How did you get involved on the book and the publishing side?
Yeah, so most of my clients are authors. I did not get inspired to write my book on health because that was not the right book. And I was encouraged in the beginning of my speaking business to write a memoir on how I lost 100 pounds in a year. And I'm like, well, that's not the book for me. So, full disclosure, I don't personally have a book because it's not ready yet. It's brewing, it's in the background. There's a great right time for everything. And for me, it will probably be on public speaking. So I wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
But I work with a lot of clients who have written books, everything from nonfiction to white papers or ebooks or things like that. And the good part about that is your book becomes your signature speech. So you already have half of the battle already done. You already did all this work to birth this book, and now you just have to translate it into a different form of expression, which is speaking. And so you've done all the work. You don't need to recreate the wheel, rethink about what you're going to talk about. Instead, you take your book and you edit it into a signature speech, which can continue to grow your business for years to come. Plus, events want to see that book. If you have a book and you're up against a speaker who doesn't have a book, they're probably going to choose you first. And that's just what we know from the industry.
I've heard that so often. I've had our own authors say that exactly, especially during the pandemic. We, live events were canceled when it came down to trying to find someone to do a Zoom event to fill in for that gap that they had promised for their employees. They turned around and looked at their bookcase and pulled out a book. I remember this guy. I remember his talk. I really liked him. And boom. And thankfully he had his contact information at the back on the very with his bio. I can't tell you how often we'll get someone where we have to say, remember, you really need to put your contact information, even if it's a QR code that takes them to your website. Yes.
Yeah, that's very important. And nowadays, especially if you're sending your books out to different event organizers and saying, hey, I'd love to present to your team, you can keep all your contact information in the book, but it's more like a business card these days. If you have a book, it can become your business card. It can be your primary marketing asset or vehicle. So don't hesitate. And the good news is if you want to approach professional speaking where you're getting paid a speaking fee to show up on stage, the materials fee that they will pay you as a professional speaker is outside of the budget of what they would pay you in a speaking fee. So even if they don't pay you a speaking fee, they probably will pay for a certain number of your books for everyone in the audience. So important thing to pay attention to, especially if you want to sell more books.
And I know we've talked with our authors about how to price that book, less than what it shows on retail. Do you have any comments on how do you price that book when you're selling in bulk?
Yeah, well, bulk discount is always a good thing. I guess that would depend on how many you have to print yourself. Like a lot of people, they have a bunch of books in their trunk of their car and they're hoping they'll find someone on the street, they'll talk to someone at the grocery store and sell some of those books. So if you have a big collection of books, whatever it would take for you to get that into audience's hands, and depending on what speaking event you're at, obviously, if you have 1,000 people in the audience, the pricing for that might be a little bit different because the higher the quantity, the lower each item cost will be. But and that's something that also, if you're pricing yourself, you want to be intentional about, are you doing a flat rate for everything, like your fee and your book? And then if they need you to itemize, what that might look like. So there's a few different things to think through when it comes to bulk pricing. And I'm sure you have some good advice around that as well, Kathy.
Yeah, we have conversations with our authors about that, and quite often, yeah, we never want anyone to buy 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000. We've had people do that, and so there are ways to work around that. So you just buy the amount that you need for that event, have it drop shipped there, and we can help you figure out how the best way to do that. So, if when you're a speaker, is there a tie between how you're marketing your book, if it's informational versus if you want to speak and entertain?
Well, that depends on your book, and we've had some people share their book titles out there. If it's a nonfiction book, it probably will become your signature speech. If it's a fiction book, you might want to approach it a little bit differently in terms of how you might market that. And then there's also, of course, the opportunity to have a table at the back of the room if it's a live in-person event. So if it's not immediately apparent from your speech or from the content you're delivering on stage, then you can have, independent conversations with people at the back of the room, especially if it's part of a bigger event or a bigger conference, then you can have those conversations around that. But in terms of marketing your book, using the assets you already have in terms of your book page, Amazon page, media sheet, if you have that. Of course, if you're taking this into speaking, you'd want to adapt it into a speaker sheet, or which is part of your speaker kit. So if you don't have a speaker sheet, you take a lot of the content you would have from your media sheet for your book and then adapt it for your signature speech. So the speech that's inspired by the book, it's best if you can make it consistent across so that if people look up the title of your book, it's the title of your speech. And so anytime they look that up, they know that that's what you're known for. So that's why already having a book is a great thing because it can become the name of your speech. There are ways to customize your speech title so that it's appropriate for different audiences as well. So for example, just looking in the chat here, notes from dad, my future always forward, if that's a book title. So you might change it and say notes from my dad for Father's Day events or something like that. Or my future always forward for parents. So you change your title depending on who you're customizing that to, which audience you're bringing that to. So it's still the name of your book, but your speech title is even more customized. That's the trick for customizing your speech going forward at different events.
So it sounds like if we're talking about the book is the big picture, and then you can break it down into pieces and parts that may become part of that talk that you're giving.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, do you work with authors who want to be speakers or only speakers who want to be authors or vice versa?
Let me think that through.
Did I say that
Speakers who
right?
want to be authors and authors who want to both. I work with
Okay.
anyone who wants to bring their message to stage or behind a microphone.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Or in print. Yeah.
Yes.
Bring it to
Yes.
print. And is there a difference between books that grow businesses and versus books that entertain? For
Mm.
example, we had two men that used to work in the cruise industry, and they were telling short stories about things that might have happened on cruises that were humorous and funny, but yet they also compiled them as a book. So how do you approach something like that?
Yeah, that's interesting. As a speaker, there are three things you're going to have to be doing in order to really just knock it out of the park. You have to entertain, you have to educate, and you have to engage your audience. If you're doing all three of those, You're going to be consistently on stage. People are going to ask for you to come to their stages. Now, if you do two out of those three, maybe you entertain and you engage them, you can still be invited back. So that's the goal for what event planners are really looking for. Now, if you already have an entertaining book, then it makes sense to carry forward some of those stories from the book. And you still have to make it educational in some way, shape, or form. And this depends on what type of speaking you're doing. If you intend to be a keynote speaker, you're probably going to lean heavier into entertainment than you might in educating and that sort of thing. And engagement is a little bit different if you're a keynote speaker versus if you're a breakout proposal speaker. If you're doing breakout sessions or strategic sessions within corporate, then of course you'll be still having those elements of engage entertaining and using stories, but you might lean heavier into the education piece of it so that there's a tangible takeaway for people. And that's one of the funnest parts is mining your book for the gold, which is the audience takeaways. Of course, it's very difficult to take a 70,000 to 100,000 word book and put it down into a 7,000, 8,000 word speech. But once you're able to mine for the gold, you can mix and match different stories from your book to aid with either entertaining or educating your audience. And there's a format, when I work with people, I have a certain format that we go through around that so that you can always know what you're bringing forward for the audience.
Most of the writers that I know tend to be introverted and shy. So how do we get from a writer that loves to write to an author who's willing to speak? Sometimes there's a big gap there. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. One of my previous clients, Michelle, she spent 7 years writing her book. She said in a closet. It wasn't a closet, but it was a very small room in her house, and that was where she sheltered herself and she worked on the hard work of getting her book out there. And when she started working with me, she's like, "Well, Jen, I haven't we came out of the pandemic. She's like, I haven't been in person with people in ages. I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm not a flashy person." But she brought some different strengths in terms of she had some natural humor. She has a very conversational style about her. So we brought forward those strengths she already had. And I will say a good percentage of professional speakers out there are actually introverted. I myself am introverted. And the benefit of being an introverted speaker is you really know your content well. And because you have good content to talk about, you will not run out of things to say. You just have to get past those nervous jitters if you're a nervous speaker. So for some people, nervous speaking means you speak too fast, and for others, it means you speak too slow. And that's something that you can learn and practice and rehearse so that you don't have to worry about those things. And as you get more experienced, it will become part of your muscle memory and it will be just like having a normal conversation with anyone.
Well, and I think Toastmasters is a great place for if you live, and I'm noticing we've got different parts of the US represented here on the call today. So I'm pretty sure that a Toastmasters is going to be fairly close to wherever anybody lives. I can't even remember how many we have here in St. Louis. I want to say it's hundreds, but yeah, it's a lot. And we're not that huge of a metropolitan area. That's a great place to get your foot wet and practice.
Absolutely. And get that feedback from actual audiences. Toastmasters will automatically give you feedback. You can also get it if you're actively pursuing places to share your book right now. Chambers of Commerce, Rotary clubs, they're
Mhm.
always looking for speakers and they're more general audiences. So if you have a book that's a fiction book or a children's book, then that might be a better place for you to share your message around that book because it's a bigger community vibe there. And they're always looking for people and they're always willing to have you share your book there.
So I know some of the people on this call are familiar with both Toastmasters and NSA, but can you give us just a brief synopsis of the difference between Toastmasters and NSA? NSA is the
Oh,
National Speakers Association. Yeah.
yes, night and day difference. So, Toastmasters is about the craft of public speaking and leadership development. But there's a stopping point for Toastmasters, and that's why I exited Toastmasters as well, is because I was no longer able to grow within what I was hoping to do. No shade on Toastmasters. I'm still a big
Right.
fan, but you can only speak for 5 to 7 minutes. So as you can tell, like if you're doing a 45-minute speech, you can't really practice that properly within Toastmasters and get that proper feedback. A lot of the work we do as speakers is within our transitions and how we engage people, and there's only so much you can do with that in 5 minutes. So National Speakers Association is more for the business side of speaking. They do sometimes have Speakers Academy where they'll walk through your speech and things like that, but they're looking less on the presentation skills side of it and more on the business side of it. Like, how can you build your programs? How can you negotiate contracts? How can you find leads and find those opportunities? So it's kind of different purposes. Not everyone wants to, a lot of people want to speak just for the sake of speaking and getting better at presentation skills. National Speakers Association is if you know that you want to build your business involving public speaking. Now, I'm not saying you have to earn $50,000 per speech in National Speakers Association, but you know that you want to grow your business through speaking.
Yeah. I know our local NSA, we pull in some fantastic speakers and to come and visit once a month. And it's just a wealth of information. When you go to those types of meetings, you're always going to learn something new about how to, even if you're still at that level of your local chambers and your local schools and, whatever it is you're doing, you'll always find something new to learn. So what is the best way for authors? You've got your book. You want to get out there, you want to tell people about it. It's funny, I was having a call with actually one of the authors on here earlier, and we were saying there's two things I always tell our authors. One is we're not going to plan your retirement around the sale of your book. And it's not about how well your book sells, it's how well your book sells you.
Mm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And how can that book actually get us more speaking engagements?
Yeah, for this, I'm going to share a few slides. And so bear with me a moment as I navigate to that. How can your book help you get there? Well, when we get started, we want to make sure we clarify what our goals are with speaking. If our goal is to sell more books, then there's a particular strategy we'll be following around that. And it's important to also organize your content in such a way that it makes sense, that you're not giving everything away from your book or the best parts of your book. It's more of a teaser from your speech to your book so that people have a reason to take action on that. And I have a free template for all of you. I'll post that in the chat, the link to that if you're interested. But building your speech is a little bit different than building your book or writing your book. Of course, it's a shorter, more abbreviated version of it, but editing is going to be your best friend. And so if you had someone support you with editing before that, then it's going to be important for you to perhaps get some support with editing down to, again, a 60-minute or 45-minute speech, which is more what people are looking for today. And then also take a look at your takeaways. So if you want to take your book and turn it into a speech, you already have a title, you already have a topic. You may have some ideas of audiences that you want to bring that to. So what's most important at this moment is to look at what are those takeaways you want your audience to really take action on or think differently about. Not everything requires action steps, but you want them to think differently about your subject matter, even if it's through the use of metaphor and story. So those three audience takeaways for a 60-minute presentation are going to be the most important thing, because as you're having conversations with different organizers, they're going to ask you, well, what are the learning objectives of this particular talk? That's the audience takeaways. You should have at least three of them, up to five of them, because sometimes the top three you choose may not resonate as well. So have a few in your back pocket just in case, so you can market yourself more appropriately. And just to go a little bit deeper into takeaways, and then I'll take it back to you, Kathy. Mining your chapters for the gold in your chapters. Obviously, every chapter you wrote is good. We know that because you published the book, but some of the chapters lead into the conversation better than other chapters. And again, that's something that if you're like, how do I do this, Jen? Where does that go? I can talk to you outside of this, and it's important as well to understand that you're not using necessarily the same stories with each presentation you deliver. Now, the core content of your presentation and the audience takeaways are the same, but you're using different examples and stories and citations from your book to support those things. That's how you keep things fresh and interesting and still have a consistent speech that you're delivering each time. And again, just a reminder, three main learning objectives or audience takeaways from your book that will make them wanting more, that will make them say, what comes next? Like that was really fun and exciting. What comes next?
And I like that because you're not giving away the entire everything you know to your audience. You always want someone to follow up and see what else they can find out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to remind everybody also, if you have a question, please drop it into the chat and I'll be watching that and making sure that we get those questions answered. I wrote down a question as you were talking a second ago. So when you're working with authors, do you ask them for an outline of their book or do you actually read their book?
Oh, this is a really good question. I do end up reading most of my clients' books just because I'm a bookworm. I love books. I read like 4 or 5 books every week, and that's not an accident. I just love books. I love content, and I'm a fast reader. I'd much rather read a book than listen to one.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I most likely will end up reading your book. And I expect you to get to a point when we're working together where you can give me everything I need to know about your book in 5 to 10 minutes verbally. So if you're not there yet, then I know that we have work we could do together because it can be difficult. Some people don't know how to talk about their book. I had a different author, Amy, who said she can talk up other people's books all day long. She's actually a book coach, but she really struggled with talking about her own book and didn't know how to insert it into a conversation. So she worked with me because she's like, I don't really know how to approach this when I'm at a barbecue in the summer or I'm hanging out with my friends. Like, how do I bring up my book and how do I talk about my book? And I helped her realize like some of the parts of her book that were super intriguing. She was talking about how she quit teaching because she was burnt out and how it's really important for her what language people use. And so these are the pieces that I helped her mine from her book. So she's like, I can easily talk about my book now. It became an easier process.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about, we started talking a little bit about different ways that authors can sell their book around that speaking event. And one was, bring a friend or a family member and put them in the back of the room at a table that has your book. What are some of the other ways you've seen speakers uh, get sales for their books?
Yeah, well, there's a couple different ways as well beyond the table at the back of the room, right? That's for book sales, but you could also give away some of your books to the audience. I've seen people tape their books underneath the seats
Mhm.
before you have to prep this ahead of time, of course. Like, and if you're like, you look under your seat, oh, we've got a free book there. Or if you are super engaged and respond to a question, someone in your audience responds to your questions, you could give them a copy of your book. A lot of speakers do that as well. So it's always helpful to have books for giveaway as well, because people at that table will be like, "Oh, what's in the book?" And they'll look at the cover, they'll look inside. People will get very curious. And of course, there's always opportunities for you to po pre and post event offer giveaways as well. So if you do like a social campaign or something like that, you could say, the first 10 tickets who come to this event get a copy of the book signed by me. Things like that could be helpful. And event organizers will love that you're bringing people to that event because it's hard to fill events. So anything you could do as a speaker there to promote the event will be very much appreciated. And you can get books in people's hands.
That's awesome. We have a question from one of our authors. What is the biggest mistake you see authors make when transitioning from writer to author?
Writer to author or writer to speaker?
Writer to speaker, I'm sorry.
Okay, just wanted
Put
to
my
make sure.
glasses on. Should put my, yeah, thank you.
One of the biggest challenges is we write differently than we speak. And so if you just open up your book to any page and start speaking what you wrote down, depending on what type of book it is, that's probably not the same as how you might speak that same content. So one of the rehearsal pieces that a lot of my clients work through on the presentation side is when you're scripting out your speech, yes, of course, you'll be inspired by your book, but make sure you read it out loud to yourself and listen to it because if that's not the way you would normally speak, or there's a tongue twister, or there's something that just doesn't flow when you're trying to wrap your mouth around it, then it's probably good to change up the word choice. It's good to pause. There are things you can do verbally that you can't really do in the written form. So utilizing those techniques and understanding how the audience receives it might be different than how you would read it or how you would write it.
When you're working with your authors, do you recommend that they have different lengths of a talk? And if so, what are they? And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a signature speech is it's one speech that literally can become anything you need it to be. It can shapeshift into a keynote. It can shapeshift into a breakout of 90 minutes. It can shapeshift into a half day retreat session that you might host. It can shapeshift into a 3-minute sponsored pitch that you might do on different stages if you're sponsoring an event. All of this can be accomplished with the same signature speech. Now, you may be wondering, like, how is that possible, Jen? Well, just the same as you take snippets from your book. Like, you might focus on one chapter, you might focus on the overarching book synopsis, you might focus on Cliff's notes. There are different ways you can deliver that vehicle. And that's why being clear about your speaking goals is important. If you're just going to do book signings, you don't need a prepared speech. But if you know that you're going to be talking about your book going forward, having multiple ways to deliver that content, both live and virtually, will benefit you and get you on more places to share your book.
And people love stories. That's why I'm thrilled you're sharing all these stories about some of your clients. That I was always taught it was a great filler option also. Keep a mind file of different stories that you have rehearsed and told other places, perhaps at different times, but always be ready to pull out one more story just in case you need a filler or take out a story in case you're over time and you're watching the clock. Another great question that we've gotten from our audience, is it worth the time, energy, focus, money to go with a speaking agent?
Speaking agents take a cut of everything that you book. So if you're booking events at 2,500, 5,000, they may not even be interested in working with you because they take a percentage, and a percentage of 2,500 is not a lot of money at the end of the day. So if they're working with you, they probably want you to consistently be earning at least ten to $15,000, if not more, depending on the speaking agent and their level of experience, and to show that you have a history of being consistently booking opportunities. So they will just multiply that effect for you. And it takes a lot of work. They could work with you for 3 months and not book you anything if you're not a person who's proven the model already. So speaker agents generally don't look at you unless you've already proven that you can consistently book yourself. That's why I like to give people the keys to booking themselves. I have a masterclass coming up on that. It's July 17th. If you're curious, I'm happy to send you an invitation. But I want you to get really good at booking yourself before you consider, should I invest in solutions? Should I invest in this? Because nobody can sell you as good as you can sell yourself. And if you don't know how to sell yourself, we can get you there. But it's important to know how to do that before you give the control over to someone else, because they won't know you and your work as well as you do.
I love that. So you talked a little bit about your class, and I understand that you also have a free gift for our audience today. Tell us a little bit
I
about that.
Yeah, I do. So the free gift is called the Signature Speech Template, where I said that one speech that can grow your business and sell your books for years to come. The template, I've got it. I'll post it in the chat, and I'm happy to send the links there. So that's how you get started. It'll help you clarify your speaking goals. It'll help you identify the organization for your speech, and it's a basic organization. Sometimes we have to shake up the organization a little bit, depending on if you want to be more entertaining with your speaking, then we can discuss what that might look like. But this will give you all the keys you need to get started. And I also have my email and my contact information there. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's my favorite place to hang out. I'm happy to connect with you there as well. And if you want, I can put up a slide with my QR code if you are on your laptop and want to click a mobile version. I'm happy to share that.
Yeah, and we'll also make sure that we have that. If you could email that to Julie and I, and we'll make sure that you we'll include that on our email follow-up email that goes out, your your QR code and all the links that you've got. And one more question from the audience. Do you feel that starting a podcast is still a powerful tool resource to support this author to speaker transition?
It depends on your comfort level with speaking. So what I'm noticing is a lot of people will start a podcast as kind of like a an entry action step to take to speaking. But what I'm noticing is a lot of podcast hosts they're like radio hosts, right? They love talking, they love conversations, sometimes they love interviewing others on their podcast, but it's its own vehicle, right? You can still sell books and you can still get clients for your business through podcast hosting, and it doesn't necessarily lead to speaking opportunities outside of your podcast. So, and there's a lot of work involved in hosting your own podcast, production, editing, social media. There's a lot of work. I know some people who hire that out, and it's not cheap to do that. If you know that speaking is in your future, you don't need to invest anything to get started. You can certainly invest in getting started, but you need to know how to talk about your speech and you know how to have your speaker kit and your media sheet ready to go. It's a lot of work to start a podcast, and it's more of an indirect correlation to becoming a well-paid speaker. A lot of speakers have a podcast, but that's not their primary. They might lean on it in secondary or slow speaking seasons. Like summertime is generally a slow time for speaking, depending on what markets you speak to. So they might lean into batch recording a bunch of podcasts during the summer, and then when speaking kicks up again in August and September, then they'll focus on paid speaking opportunities. So it just depends on the mix of business that feels right for you. Just know that podcast hosting is a lot of work and it could be its own thing. So it just depends on your goals and your comfort level with speaking in general.
And Rhoda makes a good point. She has apparently a podcast, hired it out for the, I'm guessing for the creation, right, Rhoda? And it can be very expensive. Yeah,
Yes,
it can add up fast.
absolutely.
Is there, I have one more trick that just kind of hit a trick. I'm sorry, question. Maybe you have a trick answer for this. The question that it's easy to talk about what we know. So I'm looking around the authors that are in this audience. We have contractors, we have children's book writers, we have former veterans, we have authors, we have moms, we have dads. What is it about that book that we can pull out that the audience is going to want to hear? What are audiences wanting to know? It's great that we've written this book, and each of these authors can talk about that. But what is the key difference between just pulling out some information and sharing it, educating,
Mhm.
versus actually becoming an author that people ask for?
Mm, what a beautiful question. I think the difference there is in how you tap into the emotions. And so most books have a deeper meaning, a deeper lesson, but there's also a challenge along the way, right? There's that thing that stops our hero from getting to whatever it is they're trying to get to. Your audience is the hero. How can you encourage them to own that hero role through your speech? That's how you can be the person who gets asked to come back on stage and gets asked how to get your book. And that's how you keep showing up, is when you put your audience as the hero and it's very clear to them what they need to do going forward, even if they never again see you from that speech.
I like that because quite often I share with our authors, people are looking for hope and community.
Mm.
And, it started with the pandemic. And I thought, well, that'll phase out. It hasn't phased out. People are still looking for hope and community. And that little bit, as you said, it's part of that hero's journey. And secretly, we're still that 5-year-old that wants to put on the cape and be the hero. Yeah. So yeah,
We are all heroes in our own right.
that's right.
Our audience also craves to be a hero too.
Right. I want to make sure we've got everybody's questions answered. We will make sure that everybody gets Jenn's contact information and all of her links and the QR code and all that fun stuff. But now's the time to either raise your hand if you want to do a actual talk to us conversation. That would be great. Now's the time to do that. Um, Otherwise, we'll make sure you get those contact information. I don't see anybody jumping up. What is this? Speaking of humanity, oh, someone has suggested this must be somebody's podcast here. The Humanities in Medicine podcast experience. Thank you for adding that. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. Jenn, is there any words of wisdom that you would like to share that want to send us home with today?
Yeah. And excuse me, but I'm a visual person, so I like to end on a visual.
Awesome. Go for it.
Oh, it's loading. Let's try this again.
That's where you sing a little song. Yeah.
Do do do. Do do do. Maybe I'll go to the application here. What I'd like to say before we get that all squared away is stories matter. Your story matters. Your book matters. And people want to hear from you. You wrote your book for a reason, and you have the ability to share that reason. So there is a stage for everyone in this room today, and your audience is waiting to hear the message from your book. The best way to connect with people who want to hear your story and your message is through public speaking. Yes, people can join book clubs and read your book, but they hear about it through you sharing it. So know that your audience is waiting. Your audience is ready for you. Are you ready for them? I'd love to see you on those stages.
And we have one more question. When giving a speech, do you recommend bringing multimedia or slides?
It
One.
depends on the
Sure.
speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good to have slides as a just in case, depending on who you're delivering that content to. For example, I have corporate clients where I always have slides, but sometimes technology fails, so I can deliver my presentation without the slides if need be. So, yes, you can have slides, you can start with that, but some of my non-corporate clients don't care about slides. They care about what materials they have in front of them. So, really, that's dependent on your audience that you're presenting to. If you're presenting to a community like a Rotary Club or something like that, you may not need slides, but just know that people learn through different methods. Adult learning theory will tell you some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, some people can't do anything until they do it. So, how can you engage all different types of adults in the room with you?
I love that. Jan, you have a question? You have to unmute so we
I do. I do. Yes, I have an opportunity this coming Monday to be interviewed on TV for 3 minutes. And I'm thinking, what do I put into those 3 minutes? Um, do I put something personal about myself? Do I talk only about the book? Do I combine that? It's just it's kind of rather daunting to me to see that three minutes doesn't seem like a long time, but it could be a very long time, and I want to do it right.
Yeah,
So,
well,
any suggestions?
congratulations. Congratulations, Jan. That's amazing. A TV spot is kind of a big responsibility, isn't it? Because you're like, oh, 3 minutes. That doesn't feel like a lot of time. First of all, I'll tell you, 3 minutes is much longer than you think it is, and it'll probably go super fast. So think about a story arc, right? When you first get on there, they might have some questions for you. So understanding if they're going to ask you questions first so that you can, build time for that. But otherwise, I would develop a story arc and just say, here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end. This is what I absolutely need to convey by the end of this 3 minute TV spot. Make sure you have a call to action in there and make it absolutely easy for people to take that next step if they choose to take that next step and have fun with it. TV is a great opportunity.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Thank you for that.
what
Appreciate it.
You're
time?
welcome.
What time is it on, Jan?
It's Channel 2, 9 o'clock in the morning,
On Monday morning,
Monday morning.
16th. Okay.
Yeah.
Those of us locally in St. Louis will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward
Thanks for
to
being
look
here.
forward to having you.
Thanks for being here today. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here and joining in the conversation with Jenn Espinosa-Goswami. And I'm thinking of that song that someone suggested earlier.
Go, Johnny, go, go.
Yeah, go, Johnny, go. Yeah, you sing much better than I do. And we will be sending out the information. Be watching. Coming up on June 26th, we have our next writing masterclass. If you want information on that, please reach out to Julie or myself. Julie, we may want to put a link for that in our follow-up email just in case. And then in July, just in the last 24 hours, I've decided I'm going to do my annual. Usually we do it in January, but we chose something else this year. July, I think last year we took off for our second Thursday of the month. This year I'm going to do my talk on navigating the wild, wild west of publishing. So if you want to sit in on that, it's about a 45 minute. We have lots of time for conversation and questions. I hope you can join me then. And those dates will also be in your follow-up emails. Jenn, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you, audience, so much. And let's all stay connected. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.